One is the loneliest number that you'll ever do.
Loneliness was always foreign to me. Sure, I'd felt alone and sulked sadly in my room for about 5 minutes or so. But when you have a twin sister, even that's pretty hard to do. My sister's name is Dolores, but she goes by Dee, and she's my favorite person in the entire world. She's loud and friendly and cheerful and charismatic. I, on the other hand, am the complete opposite. But that's okay. Dee takes care of me. That is, Dee took care of me. She's gone now. It all happened on Friday night. I was sitting in my room reading Catcher in the Rye for the 8th time since Dee gave it to me last month. At 2:58 a.m., just as I was reading about Phoebe on the carousel and Holden's retreat into childhood, and my parents were consoling my little brother Michael after a particularly terrifying dream, they got the call. I don't know how I survived the funeral. I knelt over her open casket and immediately began to cry. Her once lively, smiling face was relaxed. Her lips pouted slightly, mimicking the expression I wore almost constantly. She wasn't Dee anymore. Mom had insisted she wear the plain, beige dress Grandma had bought us both last Easter. Dee hated that dress, but when I tried to tell my mother, I was told off for being disrespectful. They put makeup on her. Not Dee makeup, though. Not the slightly over-exaggerated black eyeliner and bright pink lipstick she wore to school each day. No, just a dusting of foundation to hide the road burn that covered her left cheek, and a bit of pale eyeshadow. I didn't talk to anyone there. Practically our entire school came out to see her body being lowered into the ground. A mousy-looking girl in my chem class smiled sympathetically at me, but I could not bring myself to give her any sort of response. My parents cradled Michael as they thanked everyone for coming. I watched Brandon, Dee's boyfriend of about 3 months and class president, collapse into the arms of his peers, who all had tears running down their faces as well. My parents made me go to school a week after the funeral. They told me it would be good for me to have some normalcy back in my life. But they didn't see that for me, nothing could ever be normal again. I had lost my other half, my best friend, my only friend. Subsequently, my first day back was hell on earth. People stared at me in the halls, students and faculty alike, and whispered to each other, thinking I couldn't hear. Wait, isn't that Dee's sister? What's she doing back so soon? I know, but she looks awful. Poor girl. I skipped lunch and chose instead to find a quiet corner of the library to charge my phone in. I scrolled through the last texts I had from her, but they were mostly just quick "where are yous." I felt a tap on my shoulder and spun around, surprised. Melanie stood before me. Her boyfriend was the one driving the car that killed my sister.
Two can be as bad as one.
Do you mind if I sit? She asked, twirling her sleek black ponytail nervously. I shrugged indifferently. I'm so sorry, Lila, I really am. I understand how you're feeling. At that point, I snapped. I couldn't take it. She wasn't sorry. She was sorry her boyfriend was in so much trouble. She was sorry that she had lost someone to gossip with in statistics. She most certainly did not understand how I was feeling. No one could ever understand how I was feeling. No one could possibly know my pain. My parents couldn't be too mad at me. They probably would have done the same thing if they were in my shoes. The next few weeks were bad, though. And I mean bad. My mom and dad began fighting almost constantly, and I spent most of my time in my room with the door locked, trying on Dee's clothes and staring in the mirror. If I smiled, it was almost as if she was staring back at me. But it wasn't often I could get myself to do that. I would spend hours in front of that mirror, crying, screaming, even occasionally laughing. Months wore on. I remained in my room, blasting My Chemical Romance to drown out my parents yelling, and Michael and his friends running all over our house, shooting each other with plastic Nerf guns. The summer was coming to an end. One particularly sunny August afternoon, my father called my brother and I downstairs to the living room for a family meeting. We hadn't had one of those since last November, when Dee forgot to unplug her flat iron and my mom spent an hour and a half lecturing us on fire safety. I already knew what this meeting was about, and a pit was forming in my stomach.
The loneliest number since the number.
They gave us a by-the-book divorce speech. My mother shed a few tears, and they both stressed that this wasn't our fault, and that it didn't mean they loved us any less. It was weird. I was sitting in a room with my family, people who loved me and knew me my whole life. But I had never felt more alone.
No is the saddest experience you'll ever know.
I read Catcher in the Rye again that night, and at 2:58 a.m., just as I was reading about Phoebe on the carousel and Holden's retreat into childhood, I heard a knock on my door. It creaked open, and Michael tiptoed inside. I put down my book. His big brown eyes had lost their mischievous twinkle, and his face was blotchy and tear-stained. It looked remarkably similar to mine. "Lila," he started, voice shaking. I can't sleep. Is it okay if I stay here with you tonight?" I nodded, and he jumped up on the edge of my bed. It was at that moment that I realized how much this little boy needed me, and how much I needed him. And I stopped feeling so alone. We were going to make it through this together.